Welcome to the Moviegoers Society podcast brought to you by Nerdtropolis. I'm your host, Sean Tajipour, the mayor of Nerdtropolis. And joining me today is my co-host, Drew Munhausen, the professional media and movie mastermind. What's going on, Drew?
Not too much. I just had a weekend away, so it's nice to be back home. But otherwise, not too much going on. How about you?
It was a good weekend. I'm back to the grind, start the week off pretty strong. But finally, we get to do something different in this podcast. In the Moviegoers Society podcast, we dive into the world of cinema, exploring everything from beloved classics to the latest blockbusters. And we're on episode 7 now, Drew, which is super exciting that we're still going. We're still on air. I must say.
We are.
And we're diving into the George Lucas classic. Yes, George Lucas classic. And no, it's not Star Wars, guys. It is not Star Wars, but American Graffiti. But before we get into it, we want to make sure that everyone can connect with us online. And you can find me on almost every social media platform at Sean Taj. You can also find Nerdtropolis at Nerdtropolis on every social media platform you can think of. And make sure to visit nerdtropolis.com for your daily dose of movie news, reviews, interviews, and trailers. And Drew, where can they find you when you're not contributing to Nerdtropolis?
You can find me at Drew Munhausen on Twitter, at Drew Munhausen on Letterboxd, and over at Fresh Out the Podcast. And yeah, Sean, it's funny, in your intro, you mentioned we talk about the new releases, we talk about classics, beloved classics. And this is actually the first time we really get to dive into one of those beloved classics. We've been talking about the new releases. This is the first weekend where there was a new release because Gran Turismo came out this weekend, but we've actually already done an episode about that one because we got to see it a while back. So do you have anything to add about Gran Turismo?
Well, we did a giveaway to watch Gran Turismo. One of our followers, Yuta, won those tickets and they got to go experience Gran Turismo in Screen X. I didn't get any details on how Screen X for Gran Turismo, but they loved the movie. You can go back to our older podcast to see what Drew and I thought about the movie, more detailed, or you can go to nerdtropolis.com and check out my review. But it's getting a lot of great reviews from the everyday moviegoers. It's been the talk of the weekend, I feel like. A lot of high praise for this movie, which is great to hear. I love to see every movie succeed as much as possible, especially when we're in a strike right now.
I was hoping that maybe it was going to see a slight bump in the box office because I believe it was Sunday was the International Theater Day, whatever the proper name of it was, where they were doing
National Cinema Day. Yeah, $4 tickets, everyone. $4 tickets. You can't beat that. That's pretty darn good.
Right. And so I was like, oh, maybe Gran Turismo will really benefit from being the, kind of the big new release for that day. And really, the movies that probably benefited the most from it are the ones that have been out for a while anyways, because Barbie. So I just saw that domestically, Gran Turismo made 17.3 million. Barbie literally hot on its tail with 17.1 million, which is insane. Sean, this is nuts. Blue Beetle fell to number 3 with 12 million. Barbie has surpassed it. So Blue Beetle managed to dethrone Barbie for 1 week and now has fallen back behind Barbie. I cannot believe the staying power of Barbie. We knew it would be a hit, but they're saying that now Barbie's surpassing Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 to be the most profitable movie for Warner Brothers ever. This is insanity.
I'm with you. This is total insanity. I'm looking at the numbers and yeah, there's only $200,000 difference between Gran Turismo and Barbie for first and second. That's just wild. I'm crying in the inside, Drew, because Ninja Turtles is not getting the proper love. I am so obsessed with Ninja Turtles. You know that. That's probably one of my favorite movies of the year.
At least it's hanging out in the top 10. In the top 5, I should say. It's still hanging out there. Like Strays fell to number 7. It's not doing too hot. But man, it kind of seems like with this cinema day and the $4 tickets, I think a lot of people probably just took the opportunity to go see Barbie again. Is how it feels like based on the box office numbers. I just can't believe the staying power. It's incredible.
Yeah, a lot of people are watching it for a second time. I believe. Is it already back? Is it doing IMAX now? Is it?
I don't know when the dates were supposed to be. I had seen the headlines that it was coming back to IMAX screens and there was going to be a new like post-credit scene or something. So they're doing what they can. They want people to do the repeat viewing of Barbie. They're going for it.
Well, I just looked it up and it seems like that hasn't happened yet. That is not happening till September 22nd for its IMAX run. So still, that's another resurgence coming, in about 25 days or so for Barbie. So we're going to have to revisit and see what the box office is. I'm crying in the inside a little bit, like I said, for Ninja Turtles, which I grew up with. And speaking of things I grew up with, today is the 30th anniversary of the first Power Rangers episode that aired, I think, what was it, Fox Kids in 1993. So we got a great 30th anniversary article on nerdtropolis.com you can check out. But Drew, what were you like? Were you a Power Rangers fan growing up?
Oh boy, was I. Yes. I like some of my earlier memories, like preschool days, pre-K. I remember the kids on the playground going outside and playing Power Rangers and me asking, what are those? And it was explained to me. And I think that day I went home and watched some of it. And from then on out, biggest fan ever. And I remember many a Christmas, kindergarten, first grade, getting Zords and action figures and all the typical things that you would expect of someone who is an early 90s kid. So yeah, I was all about Power Rangers there for a while. I want to say, I don't know if I have the number correct, but I want to say I saw Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, in theaters somewhere in the realm of 7 to 8 times. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that movie was great to see on the big screen. There's no secret that I'm a big fan. I think you can see behind me, I got a bunch of Power Ranger stuff behind me. It's something I grew up with loving and took Taekwondo and got my black belt because of Power Rangers and all that stuff. I mean, that was a big part of my life growing up. So it definitely hit me hard when Jason David Frank passed away. I mean, it still hit me today because I was going back and looking at a lot of the pictures we have together. Because we got to meet a lot of conventions. I got to help him at some of his events, taking photography for some of his cool events that he was having at his dojo. I even found a picture of me with some guy dressed up as a White Ranger at a McDonald's, me thinking it was really Jason David Frank in it. I'm like wearing my Power Rangers watch proudly. But a lot of great memories for Power Rangers. And so it kind of just hit me today. Like we're celebrating 30 years, but we're also, remembering Jason David Frank and, the impact he continued to have after, his Power Rangers run and stuff like that. I mean, he was so amazing. And so it's really sad to think that. And then speaking of, like, we had three unfortunate passings the last couple of days in the news of Hollywood, which is kind of wild. We had Bob Barker was one of them, which, to be honest, this might sound really bad though, but I totally forgot that he was still around because he passed away at 99. And for some reason, we haven't heard anything about him. And so I just figured he wasn't with us anymore. But I
think he's just been enjoying his retirement and lived to be almost 100 years old. So I think that's really impressive.
It is impressive. And I think everyone, other than skipping school and enjoying The Price is Right with Bob Barker, everyone loves him from Happy Gilmore and throwing that punch. I think it was a real punch, to be honest. It looked really really.
I saw on the Nerdtropolis article that the image for the story was that photo, which I've seen other folks on social media sharing that same photo. I feel like it's kind of the favorite to go to.
It's the best way to kind of put a stamp on his career that way. And another surprising, I mean, we had 2 other surprising passings. We had the Harley Quinn voice actress, Arlene Sorkin, pass away. And she was the original voice for Harley Quinn in the Batman animated series. And that's something else I grew up with loving. I mean, that was really my initial introduction to Batman. And that is the first time Harley Quinn is introduced. They made it for the show. And now how crazy the Harley Quinn character is now for everyone. Everyone loves that character. So she was the voice for that. And so sadly, we lost her as well. And such an iconic voice. I mean, created something that is going to go on forever, to be honest.
Absolutely. I don't have the same level of nostalgia for the Batman animated series cartoon show, but the original Harley Quinn voice, I feel like, is iconic. People know that voice.
Yeah. And I mean, we lost Kevin Conroy too, who was the voice of that legendary Batman. I mean, that's just wild. And like another unexpected death was Bray Wyatt, the WWE superstar. I think he was only 36 years old. He passed away. It's sad.
I'm a big wrestling fan, so that was really shocking because there had been so much news and just rumors of him returning to the ring soon, and this was very sudden and unexpected and very sad. And it's actually not even the only loss last week in the wrestling world, because Terry Funk passed away last week as well, but he was 79 years old and had health issues that were, well known, so that wasn't as shocking. But the Wyndham Rotunda, aka Bray Wyatt, passing was really sad, and they did like a 10-bell salute on SmackDown on Friday night, and then actually just on Sunday they had the All-In pay-per-view for AEW, and there are a lot of wrestlers there that had like Bray armbands or did different tributes to him, so that was very touching watching that. But yeah, very sad.
Yeah, that's very sad. I mean, he was definitely a fan favorite and super young, and it's weird, within just a few days, 3 people that in the celebrity world had passed away. And I don't know why this sticks. And everyone says it happens in threes. It's just a weird thing that has stuck throughout time when people say that. And it happens a lot. It's a very strange thing for sure. Mm-hmm. But a lot of great stuff they put out, they're be remembered for all their work. I mean, such talents, all 3 of them, but I don't know. It just happens more often. We got to really appreciate, everyone in our lives and just keep going. It's really unfortunate. But we just want to take time to just recognize those people that we lost. But, this week, I have to say, before we get started, I'm actually really excited because I was given the opportunity to go to a sold out concert that I was unable to really secure tickets. If you watched my Brendan Small interview, who is the creator of Metalocalypse and created that fake band Death Clock, which is going on tour at Baby Metal, I could not get tickets for that. And he kind of busted my balls that I haven't gotten them yet. And when I checked, they were sold out. But luckily, the people that are helping put on the show have invited me to come out to the show and review the show and photograph it for Nerdtropolis. So I'm super excited for that experience. It'll be my first time reviewing a concert. I don't know what goes into reviewing a concert, but I'm going to give an overview of what to expect when Death Clock and Baby Metal merges into a world tour. It's super awesome, super exciting.
I feel like there's nothing more appropriate than for the first concert review on Nerdtropolis to be a Metalocalypse concert. That's Death Clock in person, I guess.
Yeah. So stay tuned for that. If you've not seen my interview with Brendan Small, it is fabulous. I'm getting so much great responses from that, and it keeps getting views, which I really appreciate because I did this interview as a fan and for the fan. So it's a lot of great stuff. And also, if you have not checked out our previous episodes of the Moviegoers Society podcast, go check them out. There's tons of movies we have covered that are been in theaters and still in theaters. So definitely go check that out. But I think now it's time we rev up those engines and get ready to cruise down memory lane, because it's time to dive into the classic film, American Graffiti. And I have to thank Drew for bringing this one up. I've seen American Graffiti maybe a few times or so, but it's been a while. But Drew brought this up the last one, and I'm super excited to review this one.
I've never seen you perk up so much. I mentioned this movie and you got so excited, and it was set then and there. So it's kind of fun that was captured as part of our last podcast. But yeah, the exciting thing here is that you have some repeat viewing experiences for this one. This was new to me. I had not seen this. And so it was just kind of by chance. I was like, I'll watch American Graffiti. And I actually also watched THX 1138. So I was watching the early pre-Star Wars Lucas films, and American Graffiti is such a fascinating artifact of, I don't know if this is the right way to put it, but almost like of what could have been, because, obviously George Lucas just became synonymous with Star Wars. Like that became Lucas's career.
Yeah. And this is pre-Star Wars. And, this movie came out in 1973. It just celebrated its 50th anniversary. So I must mention that, so actually, we were talking about the National Cinema Day. I saw some people posting online that they went to go watch American Graffiti because a lot of theaters were, showing that movie, American Graffiti. So that's really great to see that. So this is a movie, if you have not seen it, we do recommend it. We're going to dive into some stuff that might be spoilers, but it is a movie you must see. And, you know, it's not a movie that's you get ruined by spoilers. You want to go check this out the more we talk about it. It is really fantastic. And it's a coming of age film. So if you like that type of stuff, if you like cars like I do, this is a great one. And Drew, I don't think you know, but maybe you do, but I have like cars that are from this era. I have a 32 Pontiac and I have a 68 Plymouth police car. So I have, you know, the typical American Graffiti style cars, which is great.
I think that with this one, the thing that shocks me so much is so you love cars. I love coming of age movies. Like that is truly one of my favorite genres of film. So this is a true mashup of things that you and I both really like. And I was just, I didn't realize how well this sits alongside other movies like Dazed and Confused and Fast Times at Ridgemont High and movies like that. And this one came so early in the early 70s. And that's what I was meaning by like the what could have been is it's kind of fascinating to think of George Lucas being a filmmaker more in line with like a Richard Linklater or, you know, a Cameron Crowe or Amy Heckerling or these folks that directed these other movies, because like when you think of George Lucas, you think of Star Wars or maybe, you know, Indiana Jones too, because he had a hand in those. But yeah, I just it's crazy. I loved this movie. There's some things that maybe haven't aged particularly well, and that's to be expected.
That's like a lot of movies, but I like you said some of the directors. I feel like John Hughes took a lot of note from this movie and George Lucas maybe, because this movie is the synopsis of the movie, which is almost like sounds like a John Hughes movie. It's a group of high school friends who are about to embark on their separate paths after graduating, and over the course of one night, they cruise the streets, listen to music, and engage in various misadventures. That sounds like a John Hughes movie to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely sits well alongside those movies as well. And we have a pre-Happy Days Ron Howard, a pre-Oscar Richard Dreyfuss. There's some fun appearances.
And there's some fun facts about that. Apparently the pilot for Happy Days filmed before this movie. So this movie wasn't the reason why Happy Days came about. It's the reason it got picked up, but it was made prior to American Graffiti. So that was a very interesting fun fact that I read about, that Happy Days was just picked up because of the success, but it was filmed prior.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I feel like this movie, in a nutshell, should be like shown to first-time filmmakers, because it's not mind-blowing, it's not perfect in any way, and you know it's George Lucas's really early movies, but it's done so well, and it has so much heart and soul and humor, and captures a part of American history. I feel like it is done so well, and with so many different narratives in the film and different types of characters we have, it's a lot of fun. I have to say that.
Yeah, so let me ask you this: like, of the kind of ongoing parallel storylines that are happening in this one, do you have a favorite?
It's a toss-up. I love Richard Dreyfuss in this. Like, he's so good in this. But I really like the character, I think, was it Terry? And he calls himself Terry the Tiger. In the very beginning of the movie, you see Terry in the background and his Vespa crash into Mel's drive-in. Fun fact here, I have tons of them for you. That was not supposed to happen. He accidentally ran into it, and George Lucas just kept going. So the fact that he crashed his Vespa to Mel's drive-in was not part of the script at all, and they just kept it in. So I think just watching Terry go on his escapade and having his fun trying to build some confidence was really great to watch.
Yeah, I think I'm a big fan of the character's name is John Milner, who's got the yellow souped up car and riding around with.
That's the iconic American Graffiti car. Yeah. Played by Paul Lamont. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that one a lot. I also like Terry's story a lot. I think that Ron Howard's is probably my least favorite. Is probably the one that's aged the worst, as we talked about. You know, he says some pretty terrible things to his girlfriend in this movie that I don't know if he's supposed to be, you know, a relatable character, but you're just like, ooh, you know, maybe you shouldn't have said that.
Which is funny. Then he goes on to being Richie Cunningham. And then apparently the Fawn's character is based on that John Milner character. They liked his character so much as being a greaser, like that kind of garage head tough guy, as they kind of introduced that character into Happy Days. So there's a lot of connections here.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that.
And then, you know, Ron's girlfriend in the movie is played by Cindy Williams. And unfortunately, she passed away earlier this year as well.
Wow.
Yeah, she did. And she was really great. I really liked her character in this. She was really strong, I felt like, in this. And a lot of great scenes with her. And she plays the sister of Richard Dreyfuss's character, Kurt.
Yeah. Some of these people. We have to talk about Wolfman Jack too. I mean, can we talk about Wolfman Jack?
Yes, please go ahead.
I know he was a super famous DJ. But that scene at the, can we spoil? I know you gave kind of a spoiler warning, but
this movie has been out for 50 years. So
it's tough. Like, this is one of those movies where there's a lot that happens. There's a lot of parallel storylines. So you have a lot of temptation to want to jump between all the different things that happen, because it's like, oh, you know, what about this? And what about this? So it's hard to know where to start.
Excitement for this movie and how fun it is.
Exactly. So I don't want to be like in the Wild West here as we're just like jumping around, but there's a lot of fun to be had. And yeah, but the Wolfman Jack is kind of like this underlying storyline that's going, because he almost acts as like not a narrator for the story, but like he sets the mood.
He sets the mood for the evening.
Yeah, and he's just like this consistency across the movie that culminates in this great scene where Richard Dreyfuss's character Kurt gets to meet him, and he talks about how you actually meet him, and he says, "I'm not Wolfman Jack, Wolfman Jack's off doing his own thing, and I'm nobody, I'm a DJ," but like really he is, and it's just kind of showing the persona that's put on and everything. But it's so well done, and I think from a moral standpoint, that's one of the things that that I took away thematically is just being who you want to be, or being yourself, as opposed to what's put on. And I just loved that. I loved everything to do with Wolfman Jack,
who is a real disc jockey. Like, if people don't know who Wolfman Jack is, he plays himself in this, and the reason he's in this is because George Lucas, I think, grew up listening to him, and it was one of his favorite. So we invited him to be part of this. And I think what George Lucas did, if this is correct, what I read, is he gave him points on like the overall gross of the movie, like setting him up for life pretty much, which is a great thing to do. I guess that's how much he loved Wolfman Jack, to do that for him.
Yeah. And I guess like the legacy of this movie is interesting, because, this is one that, as I said, I just came to this one, but I've heard of it for so long, but yet I've seen other ones like Dazed and Confused and Fast Times. So like, where does this sit in the hierarchy of this kind of genre and these like coming of age 70s, 80s? Well, I mean, this one came out in the 70s, but it takes place in the 60s. Is this like the OG of these kinds of movies?
Yeah, I have to put this at like the top, even though the other ones might be slightly better because of quality. And as time goes on in cinema, movies can get better. But this movie was so early on, and it's one of George Lucas' first films, and it really set the tone of the type of films would be delivered to us for generations, to be honest.
I didn't realize that it was an awards player too. Nominated for Best Picture, nominated for Best Director, Best Supporting Actress, Best Screenplay, Best Film Editing. So it was an awards player too.
It did. And the reason this movie came about, we can't forget, is because of Francis Ford Coppola, who told George to write another movie that would maybe appeal to a mass audience, and this is what we got. So that's just amazing. There's just all these intertwining connections in Hollywood with all these movies and directors and writers. It's wild.
Have you seen THX 1138 by any chance?
I believe so. It's probably been a while, and there's an Easter egg, obviously, is the license plate on that yellow deuce. Yeah.
It's Lucas's first film, and I can definitely see why it's pretty good. It has a cult following, but it's a really interesting movie, and it's pretty short. So it's an easy watch, but I can see why that was the direction that was given to George, of like, okay, you got to do this cool project that you're obviously passionate about. Now do your mainstream film. I guess American Graffiti then set him up to be able to do Star Wars in the future, and then the rest is history.
Yeah, this movie had a budget of around 775,000 and would go on to gross over $140 million. Probably 200 million plus with everything to today and sales of, Blu-rays and DVDs and everything else. I mean, this was a great job by George Lucas to make some real money for a studio and show that he can do more.
Wow. Yeah. And then obviously, we haven't even talked about in detail Harrison Ford in this movie, which, okay, this was kind of the thing that I knew going into it, right? Like I knew Richard Dreyfuss was in it. I knew Ron Howard was in it. And I knew that a pre-Han Solo Harrison Ford was in this movie. So I'm kind of watching it, waiting for him to show up. Spoiler, he's got a relatively small part, but it's memorable. But when he does show up, I was kind of in disbelief. He's got this cowboy hat and this kind of strange accent he's putting on. So it's fascinating to me that the takeaway after this was like, this is the guy for Han Solo, because when you watch this movie, that's not necessarily what jumps off the screen, even though Harrison Ford is a super cool dude.
Yeah, he's a super cool dude in this. And that's one cameo. I guess you could call it a cameo, but he's in there for a good time. The other cameo is the woman in the Thunderbird.
Yeah, Suzanne Summers.
Yes. You would never know. First of all, you really don't see her face as much in the movie. You get a glimpse of it, but she's in this. She is the one that Richard Dreyfuss's character is going crazy for and trying to find throughout the night. And that's kind of one of the plot points of the film is this Thunderbird going around to the streets. A lot of scenes you see when Richard is really struggling to get there, she's popping in the background, but he doesn't know. There's a lot of times where this Thunderbird is just going down the street and he's going the opposite way, not knowing. So that's how great this movie is. It really weaves everything together in a really fun way.
Absolutely. Yeah. I had a good time, and it's interesting because it's only it's a little less than 2 hours long. So it's a little bit longer than I thought, but like, I thought it breezed by.
Yeah, it does. I've seen it so many times. For me, it probably didn't breeze by because I've seen it so many times. And so I kind of was waiting for the next scene because I knew what was going to happen. So, but it was really fun to watch it. And I watched it a second time over the weekend with my girlfriend, and she really enjoyed it too. She really had a blast watching it.
So it was her first time watching?
Yeah, it was her first time watching, and she really loved it. She thought it was funny. She loved all the cars. And you don't see this type of car culture anymore. Like that type of car culture is dead. So it's really cool to just see people cruising around the streets in those types of cars and just in a small town feel. And just, it's something that's never going to happen again in America.
I will say that's something that when watching this almost gave me like a little bit of anxiety, is all these people like driving their cars and yelling at each other through the windows as they're driving. I think you only see one actual fender bender in the movie, and it's towards the beginning. But I was just like, what a world. In my area where I live, like, you cannot just cruise along like this because of the traffic and just people are trying to get where they're trying to get to. And so the idea of like back in the 60s that you could just cruise the strip, cruise through your little downtown area and see what your friends are doing, run into people. I love that I just love that vibe in general. So I don't know. It's like, take me back to this time period and let's go cruise around, hang out with our friends. I'm all for it.
Yeah. No one's sitting at home and watching movies or Netflix or anything like that. I mean, there's
no streaming services back then to just go, flip on Netflix. Yeah, no.
People are out and about. George Lucas does a great job delivering an authentic, 50s and 60s feel, and so much nostalgia for the people that remember that time or people that just loved all those types of vehicles. It's really cool. I love it. The great soundtrack too. I mean, to accommodate the scenes, the great music in it. So overall, it really fits the atmosphere really well. George Lucas did a great job just creating a world that was kind of forgotten. And this is the world that George Lucas grew up in. He grew up in a small town kind of that had all these cruises around town, and he was a part of that.
And I've come to understand that it sounds like George Lucas kind of, the different characters that are in this movie are like loosely based on himself or different aspects of his personality. I think that being said, which like, I'm sure that that's the case. But there's probably one of the characters in particular that feels the most Lucas-esque, which I personally would say is the Terry character, but I could see it. I'm probably more of a Kurt myself, which is Richard Dreyfuss's character.
Yeah, I think George Lucas said Terry, John, and Kurt are different stages of his life growing up. I think Terry was very early on. And then when John got involved, I guess, in the car stuff, when George Lucas was involved in the car stuff, he was more like John, and then became Kurt when he decided to go into his more collegiate and college and filmmaking style of life.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't think I have anything else. It's a fun movie. I sometimes when you're watching, a movie from the early 70s or something, I know for myself, I almost have to pump myself up or like get in the right mindset. This one, I just sank right into. I had no problem getting into it. And I just thought it was well done and fun. And yeah, it was just totally my vibe, I think is the right way to put it. I was vibing with this movie.
Yeah, it's fun for everyone. And there is some things that you kind of be like, I can't believe they said that, or the thoughts, that it was a different time back then. Things were written back then. And there's a lot of kind of side eye in some of the things that do pop up.
Maybe Ron Howard, AKA, he's billed as Ronnie Howard in this movie. Maybe Ronnie Howard shouldn't have told his girlfriend in the film that it'd be better if better for their relationship if they could sleep with other people or see other people, and that would only strengthen their relationship. I don't know if that painted him necessarily in the best light, but yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. And I did not know this, and I should have known this. There is a sequel to this called More American Graffiti, and I could not find a way to stream it without paying, to rent it or to buy it. So I do want to check out the sequel and see what's going on with it. Did you notice at the very end that there is kind of like where these people end up? They like almost seem like they're real people.
It's a little bit jarring because it's not all positive, which I get it. It's like it's like a product of its time and what was going on in the country and politically and things. So like I get what they were doing with it, but it's just after this kind of feel good movie that like ends on a happy note, you see these kind of future where they end up, and I don't know, it's a little jarring. And I've done some research on this. It sounds like it's a pretty polarizing thing. There's a lot of different takes on it, but yeah, I mean, it's not like it was a deal breaker for the movie, but it definitely is jarring.
I think that's a director's cut ending. I don't think that was what was shown in originally. I think later on they added that, and then in the theaters they went with a more lighthearted ending.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So, but I give this movie 4 out of 5 stars. That's where I did my rating.
I actually gave it the exact same rating. I think I was right at 4 out of 5 stars.
It's really cool. And if you love going to theme parks, you can find a replica of Mel's Drive-In at Universal Studios with the cars, like you see behind Drew. I believe that's in Orlando. So, I mean, that's really cool what they've done with this movie. And it's going to be in pop culture history, cinema history. I mean, it is a very important film, I believe, in American culture and just in cinema history.
Yeah, this one has earned its place there, I'd say.
Yeah. And I would like to do more. I really enjoyed this. I want to do more classics, especially as, the blockbusters are not really hitting as often in the movie theaters for us, and maybe revisit some other stuff. So I couldn't tell you what our next episode's going to be just yet.
Well, I know that Equalizer 3 comes out next weekend. I personally will have to do some homework because, not to expose myself here, Sean, but I haven't seen the first 2 Equalizer movies. So I have to, I'd have to watch the first 2 before watching the third one.
Well, if you heard me whispering, because I was embarrassed, I have not seen the other ones.
Oh, we're in the same boat. Okay. I
don't
actually
have the time to watch 3 of them, but we might have to have you talk about it, and maybe we pick up another something. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
What makes it worse is that I think a couple of years ago on a Black Friday sale or something, I picked up the 4K disc of the first Equalizer movie. So I own it. I own the first one. Haven't watched it.
Well, you got a lot of watching to do.
Like I just recently picked it up. Like I've owned it for years and haven't watched it. So it might be finally time to get that one out of the case.
Oh, I've done that too. I have a bunch of movies I bought just to buy, and I've never really rewatched them, but it's stuff I love. But yeah, I think try to do the Equalizer, maybe something else. But if you haven't checked out our previous episodes of the Moviegoers Society, please do. We're now 7 episodes in. And also check out my podcast, the Nerdtropolis Mayor Presents podcast, where I interview directors, actors, and even musicians. So a lot of fun stuff happening on there. I got some really good interviews coming up to post and to schedule for y'all, because I got some exciting stuff in the works. But once again, Drew, where can they find you?
You can find me at Drew Munhausen on Twitter, at Drew Munhausen on Letterboxd, over at Fresh Out the Podcast. And yeah, as Sean mentioned, if maybe you didn't listen to our episode about Gran Turismo because you were waiting till you had seen it yourself in theaters and you saw it over the weekend, go back, take a listen there since that one just came out. But we'll always be back with some new releases soon.
Always. And thanks again for joining us for another episode of Moviegoers Society. Once again, I am Sean Tajipour, the mayor of Nerdtropolis, and we will see you at the movies.